So our next task is to build up the two pumps. This is probably the most complex little structure we have to build. Now at this point I'm going to want you to check your kits because there's a small miscalculation in my kit. They've supplied 330 millimeters of the 3mm dowel that's required to make 2 yards and 2 pumps. Unfortunately though, that's not quite enough, and you should have in your kit a little separate bag with an additional length of 3mm dowel. So I want you to check that you've got that and use that for one of the pumps, and then take the second piece out of this length of 3mm dowel. So you want to be making sure you've got enough in this dowel for your 2 yards first. If, like me, you've not got that additional little bit in the bag, then just drop Vanguard a line and they'll send you out the additional little bit required to give you enough to make the 2 pumps. So yeah, there will be a little additional piece of 3mm dowel in a bag. It's really important that you use that for your pump so that you've got enough length for making the 2 yards. Now, so as to not hold the build up, I've not requested an additional bit of yard. I have spoken to Vanguard and they are aware of it, and all current kits get this additional bit of dowel in the bag. But if you've got an older kit like me, you need something else. So Vanguard will supply you with that. In my case, I'm going to use some 3mm walnut that I've got in my stock, left over from another kit. You can see it's a fair bit darker. So I'm going to make both of my pumps out of that, and then I'm going to paint my pump black so that it fits in a little bit better. But you should carry on doing this unpainted. Right, with all of that out of the way, let's just look at this build process. So what we've got is a number of photo etch parts, a couple of brass pins. We're assembling them together with the pins and then trimming them to length. So then we've got a little post top which we glue on, and we drill a little hole in, which allows for the pump arm, this bit here, to go into the hole and mount the whole pump assembly onto here. So this hole allows that pin to go in, and then we mount it on. So I want to chemically blacken this. You could paint it, but what we're going to do is we're going to dry fit all of these parts, trim down the nail, then take it all apart and put them to one side until we do our chemically blackening of the other parts we need. Now at this point it then goes on to manufacturing the cannon, and we're not going to do that right now. I'm going to skip past this for now until we're ready to install them, and I want to install the other parts first. So what we will do is we will skip to step 81 and build up these parts. When we've built these parts up, we can then make these parts here, which is the tiller arm and then the windlass. Then we can install all of those sub-assembly parts. Then we'll come back to making the cannons ahead of doing one or two other bits. Now, that means that all the metal parts that we need up to step 82 we can chemically blacken at the same time. So that will save us some time. We can then install all those metal bits into the various parts and then install those parts onto the Sherbourne. So that's my way of working. So we're focusing on getting the parts together and cleaning up the wood. So my first job is to cut two 25mm long bits of dowel. And to do that, I'm using this little mini mitre from Lang. If you're in the UK, you can get these from Tyrrell Models, and if you would like one of these, I have a 10% discount code for Tyrrell Models, which I will put into the video. What I'm going to do is, because I'm using a bit of scrap, I need to square the edges off first. So we're just going to put that into there, like so. Using a little mitre block means that I get a nice square cut. Okay, so I now need to measure my 25mm, so just do that there, and I'm going to mark that off with a pencil. It doesn't have to be massively exact, but try your best. It's always good to be as precise as you can. Some of this will be below the deck, so don't worry if it's half a millimetre either way, but try your best to get it absolutely bang on. Right, now just make my mark a little bit more visible. Right, let's put that in. There we go. So that's bang on the line. Now my general rule of thumb is I do it slightly oversized and then sand it back so that it's perfect. So we know that the little pencil mark is exactly 25. So I will be cutting immediately below the pencil line. So I'll be a fraction longer, but only a fraction of a millimetre longer, and then I can sand it down. So there we go, that's our length. It's nice and straight and flat. We'll check the measurement of that in a sec and then sand it down. You can see another reason to be cutting just slightly oversized is sometimes these things break, so I've got a little bit of a lip there. So what we'll do, rather than measuring, it'll be quicker just to I've just used the length of that dowel to mark my position on this one, which is there. Okay, that's my 2 lengths of dowel. So you should be using 1 length from your bag and 1 off your long piece, your 330 piece of dowel. And that I will keep for another day, because you never know when you need something. Right, so that's our bits of dowel cut. So the next thing to do is just clean the ends off. Okay, so I'm just going to smooth off the ends of these 2 posts. So you can do this in a circular motion on a bit of flat emery board, and that will just get rid of any little burrs left behind from the cutting process. So I'm just going to make sure that they're the same, exactly the same height. I'm a bit of a stickler for that sort of thing. This one's a little bit longer. There we go. That's perfect. So there's nothing more we can do with these parts until we drill the hole in, but we do have, when you look at the instructions, you do have a little ring that needs to go onto it. We can put that on loosely for now. This is the bit that will end up on the deck covering the hole. So we need to find part 75. So part 75 is the 2 sort of octagonal pieces, and I'm just going to carefully remove those. This is quite thin, this pair, this 1mm, so you can get away with using a smaller blade. We'll just drop those out, 1, 2, like that. And then what we can do is just clean up the laser burn and the tab, get rid of that scorch, and then that part is ready to be put on. So because I'm using spare material and not material from the actual supplied in the kit for my pumps, I need to just test fit them and make sure it all fits, because I've got 3mm dowel that's actually been varnished because it was used prepared for another job, and then I actually did it in a different way with different material. Right, so that's that cut off, so I just need to check that it fits, and sure enough it doesn't. Let me just check the dowel supplied in the kit. Yeah, so it's a little tight even for the dowel supplied in the kit, but it does go on. The tolerance is really tight. If you're finding it won't go on, and in my case it's absolutely not going to go on, the best thing to do is not try and reduce the size of this, although I'm going to give this a little sand in a minute and get that varnish off, because I'll be painting it anyway. But what you want to do is just open out the inside of that, and I'll show you how to do that now. So there's 2 ways of doing this. The easiest way is to use a rat tail file or round file, and just put the part over the file, and then just twisting it and going backwards and forwards, you can open it. But make sure that you're moving it around, otherwise you'll end up making the hole elongated and it won't be equal, and it won't center when you put it on. So that's probably a nice easy way of doing it if you've got a round tail file. If you haven't, another way of doing it is get yourself a little bit of emery paper. We're going to roll this up nice and tight into as tight a little roll as we can. tighter than that actually. And with it rolled up, we can then thread that into our hole and basically do the same process. We can go and just widen that hole. For me, using the file is the easiest way, but if you're a beginner and you've perhaps not got a file set, I would absolutely recommend you get one. But this is another quick way that you can do this. What you don't want is it being too slack on your parts, but you do want it to fit on so that you can move it about. So that's great now if you're using the supplied rod. For me, it's still a little undersized, so I need to sort that out, but I'm going to sand these down. I'm not going to show you that because it's not actually part of the build, it's just something that I need to do. So I will come back to you for the next step. So those are my two pumps. These parts are dry fitted only. They're left loose on, but we can leave them on. We'll glue them into place when we come to actually fit the part onto the kit. So yeah, so we can put those with our other parts to one side. Let's have a look at the photo etch now. Okay, time to remove these bits of photo etch for building our pump. This is quite thick photo etch, so I find that a knife doesn't always cut through the tabs on these, but a pair of old side cutters can do the job quite nicely. So just gonna nip these off. See, that comes off quite easily. So we've got two pump handles, one per pump. We've got the little cap that goes on top of the wood base. So I just need to take those out. There we go. And then we seem to have 6 PE16s, but we only need 4. I'm not quite sure what that is. It could be that this is it's just putting spares in, but it could be that we use those for something else later on. So I'm going to take the 4 in this row here, and we'll leave the other 2 where they are. If we end up not using them though, keep them, because you never know when spares will be handy. Things like pumps often have the same parts in different models, so especially if you're building another Vanguard kit, it's always handy to have spares of anything that you can have spares of. Then we just need to clean up the tabs. We can just sand those away. So we're building up our little pumps here. I've done one. I'm just going to show you how we do it. It's dead easy. Take one of the little handle sides and just pass your 2 pins in like so, and then place that down there like that. You could put it on a little blob of blue tack if you want to keep it stable. I've got to be honest, I didn't, but I think that's an easier way for the camera at least. There we go. Then you put your pump handle on. Make sure you've got the orientation correct. So we just thread that into the 2 pins, drop it down, and then we put this one on top like so. So in the instructions it's telling you to glue this all together with some CA glue. Trim the pin off so that it's flush, and then you paint it up. So I'm going to cut these pins off now, so you can, and then we'll file and flush. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use all these disassembled parts and chemically blacken them, because if you chemically blacken them afterwards, I don't actually know what it'd do to the glue. I've never tried it with the glued parts, but when you come to sand it flush and stuff, you're going to end up with taking that off and going back to the brass, and we don't want that. So I'm just going to snip that off, and snip that off. And because I've used a side cutter, that should be flush. I can feel that it's not quite, so let's just make sure that's on. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sand over that and make sure that nail is nice and flush and smooth is the key thing here. And then we can drop all of these parts into our chemical burnishing liquid when we're ready. Right, there you go. That's all there is to it. Take your, if you're going to use blue tack like I've just done, take your parts off carefully, because they are quite malleable and they could bend if you're not careful. So we'll just take those off. There we go. So that is my pump parts ready to go into our chemical blackening. So what we want to do is just put them to one side, keep them all together, ready for when we blacken the other parts, but they're easily identifiable, and we can chuck away these two bits that we cut off. So that is getting us to the pumps. So the next thing we're going to do, I know everyone wants to build the cannons, but I don't want to do the cannons until we are ready to do the swivel cannons. We will install them all at the same time, and we'll paint the cannon, all the different guns at the same time. Quite a few parts now that we need to chemically blacken, so going to chuck all of these parts in. I'm using a larger lid to do this. Just make sure we break that surface tension. We don't want the things floating on the top. Get that all in there. And we can burnish these little nails that we've cut off as well. Come on, in you go. It's funny how they want to go to the end. I'm sure there's a scientific reason for all of that, but I don't know what it is. So what you want to do is just make sure they're spread out a little bit, and then obviously we're going to turn them over after a while. Come on, in you go. So I have worked through the instruction manual, getting us to, where are we? Yeah, getting us to step 82. So what we've done is we've cleaned up all the wood that gets us to this step. We've also then chemically blackened, just as we did before, all the etched brass parts that we need, which includes the parts for the pumps, but we have skipped, I think, we've also got the pins for the racks, for the belaying racks. So all the metal components are done, so we need to go back and carry on that process. I've skipped the cannons, as we've previously said. We won't do the cannons until we're ready to fit and install them, so that we've not got half a dozen cannons knocking around as sub-assemblies that we've got to make sure we don't damage. So the easiest way to make sure we don't damage them is not build them till we need them. So for this process, we are also going to need to use our plans, and we will be using our plans more extensively as we go through the build. Now, on here, for example, when we look at the windlass, it gives us a little bit more detail than just the instructions on its own. So you can see how the post that we're making in the instructions interacts with the windlass. You can see here this front-on view, or stern-on view it might be, where you can see the two photo etch parts 12 are installed there, and therefore the photo etch part 13 is sandwiched between them, and we know from the instructions that we have a little nail that goes through and shorten. So what I did is I put those two parts into the wooden block. I put the nail through, I trimmed it, filed it, so I knew it fit, and then I disassembled it all and we chemically blackened them. So I have all of these parts, for example, here, ready to go for assembly. So we've got some wooden bits that we've got to glue together, like this assembly here and this assembly here. And then we've got some photo etch parts that we need to assemble as well. And so we're using two different glues for this process. So for installing the metal parts, I'm using a medium CA, and we've got that ready to go there with an applicator. And for the wooden parts, because these are small wooden parts, we're going to apply it in the same way as we do CA glue. You could use CA glue, but I prefer to use wood glue on wood because it soaks in and often forms a stronger bond, and it's easier to clean up. So I'm using something called superphatic. So it's just the same as aliphatic resin glue, but it's thinner. And this is really, really thin. It's thinner than my medium CA. Yeah, it's really good. You can use this on wood, some plastics, GRP, you know, all sorts of stuff. And as you can see, I've had this for quite some time. So, and it's a great product. So, well, let's go right back to where we were, which was step 78, and make up the belaying racks. So this is a fairly simple process, but I'm going to take it through you, you know, beginner's build and all that. What we want to do is we want to install these belaying pins by simply plopping them into the holes like that. But we need to glue them in, and the way to do this is to have the glue applied behind the belaying pins so that the forward facing edge has no risk of any visible glue. Now, normally what I would say is the best way to do this is to put glue into the hole, then put the pin in. The pin drives the glue down into the hole and stops the glue from oozing out. But our holes are quite small here, so that's difficult to do. So what we're going to do is got a little bit of glue on my applicator here, and we're going to put the pin part way in, then put a little bit of glue on the back of the part, and then drop the part down like so. Make sure it's nice and straight, and that's it, job done, simple as that. So let's see if we can get you a bit closer for this next one. So with that done, that gives us 2 racks ready to be installed, which we will do very soon. So we can put those to one side, and we need to install the stern crossbeam from step 76. So let's do that. Okay, step 76 is our first job. Make sure you get the orientation right. We want to have the 2 holes on this side as we look at it. So I'm just doing a test fit once again, just to make sure that I understand this fits correctly, and even best way of installing it. Right, and for me that is not quite fitting, so I need to take a little bit of material out. So that means that I didn't quite get the distance between those right when we installed it. Yeah, so I need to open up. So to try and keep it centralized, we'll take a little bit of material out on this edge here, and also we'll take a little bit out on this edge as well, so that otherwise it'll be slightly off center, and we don't want it to look slightly off center. It doesn't need much though. A couple of swipes with our file should do it. Okay, I'm now happy that that fits, so we can install the part. So I'm using the superphatic glue and just putting some into the opening here. There we go. Let's push that in, make sure everything's straight. There we go. Now we have a couple of eye bolts that need to be put into there, so we can do that now. So put the eye bolt into position, but don't slot it all the way down. Hold it with your tweezers, put a small amount of medium CA on the exposed shaft, drop it down. That will take the glue down into the hole and stop it oozing out. Okay, building up the pumps now. First job is to put the little caps on our wooden posts. We want to make sure that these are nice and central. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some CA glue. We're going to drill a hole through these, so we will drill through that CA, no problem at all. So a little bit of CA glue, and then we're going to put the cap on. Like so. Just making sure that it's central and that it's flat. Yeah, that looks good. So we're doing this first so the glue can dry on that and be properly cured before we do any drilling. So we can now build the handle up on that. So I'll get all the handle parts out after I put this cap on and then come back to you. Now because I'm going to be painting these pumps, the shaft of these pumps black, that's because I'm using slightly different material as I explained before. I want to do a little test fit and set the height of this part here, which sits on the deck. So I want to sit this down, sit that down to the deck, glue it into place so I can then lift this out and paint it, including the base plate. So we need to do a little test fit, and the first thing I need to do is open up the holes here for sitting them down. The false deck and the laminate deck are not perfectly aligned, so there's a little bit of a lip, and it's probably that causing a problem, but because I've used a different rod, it may well be that my rod is just slightly oversized. So I need to open that out, and the way to do that is with a round file or a rat tail file, and we're just taking back the visible false deck first, so we know we've got no interference from the deck below, and then I do 2 up and down motions and then move slightly round and just generally widen the whole hole. Doing it that way, you're evenly opening the hole, so down, up, move, down, up, move, down, up, move, and just go all the way around doing that, and keep doing that until it fits. There we go. So that is our pump in. So that's the height that we need to set this at. So we can now glue that ring into place. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the ring there. Let that just soak in. And then we can lift the part out, and we know exactly how much we need to paint. So it may look crooked when you take it out, but don't forget there's a camber to the deck, so that's absolutely correct. So we don't want to nudge this now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in a little clamp while the glue dries. There you go, and we know that we only have to paint the little ring up in our black paint. So that's great. So I'll do the other one off camera, and then I'll come back to you when we're building the pump heads. Okay, time to build up the pump handles, and these are our parts. We've got 2 nails, which are trimmed and then chemically blackened. We've got the 2 little handle pieces, and then we've got the central pump element as well. So to build this up, what we're going to do is we're going to use another pin. This pin's not going to get glued in. You can see I've put it in a crocodile clip. That's going to give us a little base to work from. So we can stack everything up, glue it all together with the pin in, take this pin out, and then insert the last pin. It should all make sense in a minute. So first thing we want to do is put one of the pump handles on. So it has to be the same orientation as this pump. They sort of align on this bit here. So I'm going to put that on the pin like so. We're then going to put this on top of there, but what I want to do is put a tiny amount of CA glue just on there, so it's well away from the 2 holes that the pins go through. So we put mount it on the pin, and then we make sure it's nice and aligned and push down. So that's gluing together even though there's no pins holding it together. The pins at the end of the day are going to be cosmetic, not structural. So we then do the same thing again. Make sure you've got the pump handle in the right orientation. I'm just going to hold it in my tweezers that way, and a little bit of CA glue well away from our location holes. We don't want to accidentally glue a pin in. Drop it on, make sure it's aligned. So we know it's aligned for that pin, so it's making sure it's aligned at the bottom. So there you go, we've built that up. That's all good. So all we have to do now is drop the pins in place. Nice and easy, yeah? So we'll get our first pin. A little bit of CA on the end. That will get driven into the hole as we push it down, and that'll be enough to hold the pin in place. There we go, simple as that. We'll do exactly the same with this last one. A little bit of glue on the end. Can't quite see what I'm doing. And drop that into place. Come on. So there we have our pump made up and ready to be installed into the body. So we need to drill a hole in the body, so let's just quickly look at that. Okay, so we need to drill a hole in the top, which will accept the shaft of the pump handle. So we only have to drill enough to allow that little shaft to go in, so about so far. Obviously it doesn't matter if we go a little bit further. Right, let's just test fit that. Actually, I'm finding the opening is a little narrow for our photo etch part, so it's not quite sitting back and aligning, so I need to open that up a little bit. So let's do that. That's why we test fit things, so we can find these things out. So what we're doing is just widening the gap, so taking a bit off each leg there, and we'll just keep taking a little bit off and test fitting. There we go. Then when you're ready, you can glue that in. So we'll put a little bit of CA in this opening here. And a little bit on the shaft that's going to go into our hole. And there we go. So I need to paint mine. You may well want to leave yours in the wood, which will look really nice. Yeah, brilliant. So you should end up with something that looks like this. I have to say that the relationship, the gap between this rod here and this piece here isn't quite right for the placement of the hole. So I've actually slightly bent this in towards that to make this sit flush against that post. Otherwise, you've got a little bit of a gap. So it's not quite perfect, so you just have to push that in a little bit. So what I'd say is push that into the hole, just into the tip of the hole, then push that towards that to make it work, which will slightly bend that. You can see it's not caused any stress, but you should have a nice looking pump like that when you're done. Right, we are now on step 81. So we're going to put a little bit of CA glue on the first part, just a small amount on the shaft here, and slot that into place. Fit is nice. Okay, then I'm going to put the other one in, and then we'll put the center piece in last. So just a touch of medium CA. Slot that into place. And just check the orientation, make sure they're nice and straight. There we go. Now, this piece that goes in the middle, I want to leave that loose because I want to make sure that it's touching the windlass correctly. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the pin through, and have the pin hold it in place for now. There we go. And then I'm going to put a little bit of glue onto the pin. Glue that into place like so, and that should leave that loose there, and we'll glue it down when we install it, install the windlass and know what position it needs to be in. So we do need to trim the pin down, so let's do that. There we go. Not quite fully come off. There we go. So the pin is glued in. That middle piece can't go anywhere. You can see it is loose and flapping about, and that's exactly how I want it for now. Yeah, happy with that. And then when we've installed this and the windlass is in place, we can plop it over, and if needs be we can glue it in, but we probably will be all right to just leave it as it is, loose, and let it hang. What we can do is just put a little bit of glue on the pin end at this end here, and you can always touch that up with a bit of black paint if you prefer. So that is that part done for now. Okay, step 82. Let's just take you out a little bit. And we've got these parts to assemble. So we're back on the wood glue. So just test fit, make sure you're happy, you understand how it goes together. And then we can glue that into place. Just clean up any excess glue. There we go, that's good. So that's ready to have the pins installed. We'll do that in a moment. Let's just check fit that. Yeah, it's a nice good fit that. So plop that in. Just give it a gentle squeeze, and then we can remove our excess glue. And always test fit both parts. All parts need to be test fitted, especially with wood. You've got all sorts of minor things that can make a difference. There we go, so that can be left to one side to dry. And this, we can now put our pins in. I'm going to do that in exactly the same way as I did before, so I don't particularly need to show you how to do that. If you want, you can glue your pins in before you install this to make sure that you've got the glue in the back. Which perhaps if I'd thought about it I might have done, but I didn't think about it, so I haven't done. Now interestingly, there is an alternative part for this which has a square section, but it's not really explained what that's for. So I don't really know. I guess maybe it's supposed to have a square end, so some modelers may want to do it with a square end. I don't really know. I'm just talking, and I could well be talking rubbish. Has been known. Once again, just making sure that the pins are nice and straight, that they're sat flush, and that everything looks good.